Hard to believe that it's already been more than 2 years since the first Equestria Girls film. I honestly have to give a lot of credit to the DHX team for coming up with a new movie every year while still devoting so much effort to an ever-improving TV series. As we come to the third entry in the yearly Equestria Girls movies, I have to admit, I have mixed feelings. Some of the concepts were new and intriguing, while the potential didn't go nearly as far as I would have hoped. The main 6 were just as fun and enjoyable as they've always been, though they had to fight for screen time with far too many new characters to count. We got to see a new version of Twilight going through a very relatable and, at times, even thought-provoking journey, all the while counting off so many tired cliches. I actually found an I Want song that exceeded my expectations, along with a villain song that just seemed so pointless. Sunset Shimmer reaches a satisfying conclusion to her character arc, in what may be the most cringe-inducing Equestria Girls film to date. Oh my goodness, my feelings are going all over the place with this movie. So, let's talk about why. First up, we have a brand new Twilight Sparkle. The same personality and quirks we've come to love from watching MLP over these past several years, but given a different path in life beset with old motivations. I enjoyed seeing a return of the investigative nature without so much of the self-confidence and leadership we've come to expect from her over the years. And making Sunset Shimmer the teacher and Twilight Sparkle the student was a great idea that, again, led to a satisfying conclusion to both character arcs. At least in concept. The execution was still rather predictable for the most part and didn't give a lot of intriguing twists and turns along the way. But we can understand Twilight's motivations on wanting to learn the concepts of magic and even going against her better judgment if it meant holding on to what she believed most important. And while there were a few moments that felt like Sunset Shimmer was going a bit too far with her reactions, her inner conflicts did make sense and did have a purpose in the grander story. The setup for the conflicts, though, I don't know how to feel about it. This new villain principal and even the students of Crystal Prep were essential to keep Twilight on her toes throughout the film and make us want to see her overcome the challenges. But my goodness, how many of you can even remember half the names of these characters? Or can recite more than 1, perhaps 2 lines of their dialogue? I can remember that these students were sort of the anti-main 6 in their personalities, and I can at least appreciate that at the very end they made an attempt to redeem their previous behavior. But for the most part, they're just completely forgettable. Compared to the sirens of Rainbow Rocks, these new villains don't even come close to leaving as much of a lasting impression. We remember some of the better dialogue. We remember their unique powers combined with music that tends to stay with you after the movie ends. Even more than that, the sirens had a backstory and far more interesting motivations. I will give the writers some credit, as seeing her blackmailing Twilight really drives home just how despicable she can be. And we really do want to have everyone else put this principal in her place. But beyond that, I'm sorry, but she is a complete bore. She's not so much a character, but rather an obstacle to move the plot along. But to be fair, she's not meant to be the draw for this movie. Twilight, Sunset, and the main 6 are supposed to fill that role, and for the most part, they did pretty well. I enjoyed watching their interactions. I enjoyed their random humor. I even enjoyed some of their over-the-top moments in the spotlight. As much as I really don't care about a high school setting or a lot of the modern pop songs, these characters are the reason I keep coming back to these films. Though it was a little difficult for them to have adequate screen time when there's so many other characters vying for space. At least with the first 2 movies, I felt that, for the most part, there was a fair amount of time devoted to each scene and there wasn't too many problems with pacing. Again, for the most part. With Friendship Games, though, there were more than a few moments where the story had to hurry up and get to the next section, without a lot of surprises along the way. But I will say that there were a few select elements that I found very intriguing. These portals opening up here and there had a lot of potential. When Spike started jumping in and out of both worlds, I was trying to imagine whether he was turning into a dragon and then back into a dog every other second. Which would have been rather fun to see now that I think of it. I mean, was this rabbit creature supposed to be something else entirely in Equestria? And while I would question just how Spike was able to pick up on language so quickly and how Twilight could just accept his newfound intelligence without so much of a second thought, I really just wanted Spike to be Spike. The writers didn't want us to think too hard about it, and I suppose I won't either. The music was, for the most part, what I've come to expect from Equestria Girls. Modern pop songs that would fit in with a high school setting. And while I still don't find that much to enjoy about them, since it's really not among my favorite music styles, I can really appreciate how much better the singing voices are getting over the years. I especially liked hearing Twilight's I Want song, because even though the lyrics weren't all that special, and we've heard this sort of piece in practically every Disney animated film we've ever seen, the emotion and the talent behind it was very heartfelt. We wanted Twilight to succeed. We wanted her to learn something new, and both the writers and the animators conveyed that so well here. And again, while I may not really enjoy pop songs all that much, many of the other songs filled a good purpose as well. That is, except for...
I realize that you've always been an outcast.
Ugh. The moment this principal started singing, I could feel the cringe. While you could argue some of the other Equestria Girls songs over the years didn't add that much to the story, this one felt especially pointless. You could have accomplished just as much if they spoke a few lines back and forth and moved the story along in less than half the time it took to sing about it. You could have played some dark background music along with the dialogue, and it would have been far more effective. And I'm sorry that I'm spending so much time focusing on this one element, but it just really rubbed me the wrong way. It didn't feel fun, it didn't feel creative, it just felt forced. But with that out of the way, I would like to give special mention to Spike during the climax scene. For much of the film, he didn't have a voice, and even when he did, there wasn't a whole lot he added to the story. However, that moment, that one moment he reminds Twilight of what she's losing just by standing there looking at her is a wonderful example of the kind of kinship they share without any need for dialogue, sweeping music, or creative visuals. I may prefer his portrayal during the first Equestria Girls film, but I have to add this short but sweet scene to his very best in the entire series. It may have been Twilight and Sunset Shimmer's big moment in the movie, but I for one can't help but adore the simple act of the number one assistant. What can I say? This scene was actually really touching. So, as you can tell by all the back and forth throughout this review, I still have very mixed feelings about friendship games. It's both intriguing and yet boring. It's both very fun and very cliche. It's genuinely heartwarming and yet so cringeworthy. I can put aside the constant need to throw toy ads in these films. I can sit back and enjoy some of the random humor and quirky moments. And yet, I feel that this movie could be both the strongest and the weakest entry in the Equestria Girls series. To be honest, I think Rainbow Rocks is the superior film overall, but in the end, I'm glad I gave Friendship Games a watch. And as for the final scene, which seems to suggest a major plot point in MLP Season 5, I think maybe I'll save my thoughts on that idea for another video. In the meantime though, I would love to hear your thoughts. Were you looking forward to Friendship Games? Did it end up exceeding your expectations, falling short of them, or perhaps both? Are you looking forward to more Equestria Girls in the years to come? What sort of theories do you have about Twilight's sudden outburst right at the very end? I would like to hear your thoughts on Friendship Games, and while I may not always appreciate some of their choices, I can really admire how the MLP staff continue to push new boundaries. I am DRWolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Now you're thinking with portals.